Welcome, welcome to another year at Hogwarts. Now, I'd like to say a few words before we all become too befuddled by our excellent feast.
What manner of man are you that can summon up fire without flint or tinder?
I am an enchanter.
By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
Merlin, Gandalf the Grey, Doctor Strange, Randall Thor, Albus Dumbledore, Raistlin Majer, and, of course,
you're a wizard, Harry.
Harry Potter. Our books and movies and games are littered with famous and powerful wizards. Wizardry, or magic anyway, is one of the most persistent and defining elements of many of our most beloved stories. And it's certainly central to Gemstone. Wizards have been around in some form or another since the Gemstone 2 days, and they're one of the most ubiquitous and powerful professions in the game today. In today's episode, we'll get into the spell-slinging nitty-gritty of wizardly life with a panel of prestigious prestidigitators, Methais, Whirlin, and GM Konacon. Welcome to the 9th episode of Town Square Central. First, to get us started, let's take 30 seconds to introduce ourselves. So let everybody know your wizard's name, your race, your level, your general build, and how long you've played a wizard.
Sure. I go by Whirlin. I play a halfling wizard pretty well past cap at this point. I am an archer wizard. You may or may not have heard about my bow once in a while. I've been playing a wizard since probably about 20 years at this point, definitely AOL, GS 3 days. I started picking up a bow on the class just once I started researching how range was leveraging the same dex bonus as spell aiming, being a halfling not being factored into encumbrance. I just kind of went with that ever since then. Really just play a wizard because I'm always drawn towards that wizard archetype in online gaming, and really never looked back.
All right. And I get, this is like my favorite part of everything I record, is I get to screw up people's names, and I haven't actually asked about this yet. So up next, Mathias.
You had it right the first time.
That's how I went. I went with Matthias, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So I got it on the first try. That's all we need to know. So how about you?
I had to stole it from an old Monty Python movie. I'm a level 100 half-elf wizard. Been playing wizard since 98. I used to be all in on the immolate build and all that until we got nerfed, and now I just have kind of an all-around build and just spam bolts all day, and that's pretty much it.
And Konacon, what's your involvement here?
I mean, I've done a lot of work on wizards. I have a wizard that's like level 18 or something.
Yeah.
So, but I've played wizards like a lot in testing, if that counts.
Yeah. And and you're I think your best, well, I don't know what, I guess we'd have to revisit the interview that we did with you, but you did a ton of work on some iconic wizard spells and the lore updates and all that stuff too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about wizards. I became very familiar with them with the work that I ended up doing.
And I myself am the proud owner of a level 26 Dark Elf wizard that I have had for 2 decades on my brother's old account. And I used them for a really long time just as to like spell me up and whatnot. And I have no idea how to play him properly. And I logged in and tried him out. And I immediately just got killed all the time and am really bad at it. So my voice is definitely a really important one on this panel. So let's just get right into it. Why would people play a wizard in Gemstone? Like, what kind of person is drawn to this class? What makes it fun for people?
When I first made my wizard, I wanted to make money back on the old enchanting system, which I ended up completely abandoning. I just like the way they play. They got elements that would counter everything if stuff had weaknesses and all that, and they're just pretty versatile. I bitch a lot about them, but overall they're pretty solid. They're just not quite as fun as they used to be, but they're still really strong.
I think in the spectrum of classes available in Gemstone, Wizard probably has the second largest quantity of various archetypes that you can go with. Now, that has been slightly changed with the Elemental Lore review. Some builds are no longer viable, some are surprisingly viable now. But you still have options for being War Mages, ranged, typical Bolter. To a limited extent, still some CS immolation, not of course the potency as it was before. Going heavy into rapid fire, enchanting with a focus on earthen fury. You just have a lot of various archetypes that you can do, so you have the ability to swap up the way that you play. And I mentioned that's probably the second most archetypes that actually probably put Bard above Wizard in terms of various ways that you can play the class uniquely.
And so what kind of person is drawn to playing a wizard? Like, what's the archetypal or stereotypical wizard player like?
I still think it really comes down with who you want to identify as in terms of the typical wizards that you've seen portrayed in Lord of the Rings, or pretty much anything else involving a wizard, sorcerer, the general gemstone archetypes. They're all really comes down to if you want to be an elementalist controlling the various elements and in touch with that aspect of mana more so than some of the other mana heavy classes using spiritual or mental mana for their strength. So if you just have a natural draw towards that. I mean, some people like being a wizard, some people like being a thief. It's just what they envision when they go into role-playing games or anything like that. And you really can't get anything more classic than a wizard.
I think it has a draw towards people that want to be powerful. There's different types of powerful, but wizard seems to pull people that want to be really, really strong. Like
people that want to do the big, flashy, powerful stuff.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Another thing I like about wizards is they're useful. Like, as far as like helping other people out with different kinds of things, usually like spell ups and all that, or just haste, all kinds of shit. They seem to be better at that have more tools for that than pretty much any other profession in the game too, which is kind of a double-edged sword because there's pocket wizards everywhere for the same reason, but they're the best class in the game, in my opinion, as far as that goes, too.
Well, and they've also got, obviously, enchanting is like a huge draw, right? Like, being able to enchant your own stuff is, and we'll talk more about that in a bit, but that's obviously a big draw for folks to want to play. What's the downside of playing a wizard, then? Like, what's their weakness?
We get nerfed a lot.
I mean,
other than that, they die pretty easily, but even then, it's not really that bad. There's not really a whole lot of real downsides to playing a wizard. Like Whirlin was saying, you can have all kinds of different builds with them and all that. Most classes can't do that and still be effective. They just maneuvers. That's pretty much it. Anything else, they're pretty okay at dealing with.
Yeah, like the dying thing. I think Matthias is a little like every time I'm logged into the main game, just like doing whatever GM thing I'm doing. It feels like a pretty good guarantee that I'm gonna see Matthias die at some point.
There's actually a good reason for that though, because I pretty much play from work all day during the day, and I just stay out hunting until I either die or run out of mana or I can't pick up anything else.
Yeah.
If I'm in the confluence, it's always going to be. Yeah, pretty much.
Now let's talk about what is going to be super exciting to Whirlin here. The mechanical side. What are the most common wizard builds, and what distinguishes them from one another?
A melee war mage, which usually utilizing something like a clade, a lance, something to that extent, paired up with haste to swing that at minimum round time. Typically, you'll see heavier races, half Krolvin, giant man, because they're just looking for the highest AS possible, because we can only 1x in a weapon. Simultaneously and similarly, there's then ranged war mages, which utilize a bow. The great thing about a ranged war mage is with only a 5 strength bonus, which even halflings can get at 100 strength, because of the benefits from 509 adding plus 15 strength modifier, and with enough training for haste, you can be firing an aimed longbow shot in 1 second. and then double dipping on the decks ends up being incredibly advantageous.
You're not like a monster when it comes to the strength of each individual swing, but you're just doing it so often that you're just whittling away at things, and you're doing it with something that hits really hard when it does connect.
Exactly, and then you're also utilizing other aspects of your kit. So, for instance, Earthen Fury is based solely on your wizard ranks. Even if you can't kill something with it, it's a hell of a disabler to start with, and then you just follow up with swings to save your mana or utilize a Tanis Bolt or an E-Wave, anything like that, just as an opener to then finish off with your weapon, and then you have mana forever.
I know that this sort of like classic build that wizards use to grind up when they're leveling is just a steam bolting build, right? What spells do wizards like to build around as sort of like their primary fun hunting tool? Like, are there any cool mutant builds or odd wizard builds that folks use?
Not so much anymore. Immolate used to be incredibly popular. Matthias was actually probably one of the strongest advocates of it back in the day. But that is widely gone. The biggest mutant build that you see nowadays for wizards is people that are going hard into enchanting. You'll see them do something like a 300 wizard ranks and then only hunt with Earthen Fury to continue to get kills and mana for enchanting purposes just on super difficult projects. Other than that, most builds are relatively cookie cutter nowadays.
Well, I find wizards a little intimidating, and I think it is because of the lores, which are just a really, to an outsider looking in, it just looks like too much information. Even on the wiki page, which I think is has everything pretty neatly summarized, it's just a lot. What are the lores that wizards can train in, and then what do each of those specializations offer to the wizard?
So Konacon can keep me honest a little bit here. In regards to fire lore, it was also, and I'm using air quotes on relatively recently, expanded, so it's no longer just a DF increase on fire spells, it's actually a DF increase on all bolt spells.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
And it'll be used if that ends up being higher than whatever other lores you have. So it definitely increases the value for fire.
Fire is a difficult one because it's obviously like it's the one that everyone thinks of as, the do more damage one, and it's questionable I think whether wizards really need to do more damage right now. I think it's just like a lot of times when we have spells that have multiple lores now, I think people just value other things over like more AS. I think people just, because wizards don't necessarily need more right now, they value the utility that can come from other lores over just like more damage.
So let's talk about that. That's what I'm interested in, is if you had to sort of summarize like what each lore specialization offers to the wizard just generally. Like what are, so if people think of like, and I literally have no idea here, like Earth offers the best protection bonuses for folks. Like, is there a sort of cohesive theme to what each of these lore specializations offers to wizards?
Absolutely. Fire is predominantly around damage output. Very simple across the board. If you want more damage, you go fire. Water is predominantly dwelling around mana manipulation. You're going to see higher mana regen recovery rates paired up with some spells. Your mana leech is going to do better, I believe. And then also some implications with rapid fire. If you want time manipulation and utility, that is air. That's going to be benefiting you things like haste, celerity,
yeah,
stuff like that. And then earth is defensive as well as some aspects of strength. There's some really good scaling in the earth lore. And that's going to be benefiting your elemental defense spells. It's going to be adding some random defense procs on your stuff. It really breaks down into those four major archetypes.
And are there any weird paths that you can go down to unlock cool spells? So I was reading the wiki for wizards and I saw Stonefist, which just seems like a very flavorful, like cool spell, you know, like this earthen fist doing things on your behalf. But it seems like you have to really go heavily into Earthlore to make that work. Like, can you do that? Can you just be like, I'm going to be the Stonefist wizard and make that like the way that you hunt? Like,
No, Stonefist is garbage.
I've never seen one.
Oh, that really bums me out. That really bums me out.
That's one of them spells that could be really, really awesome. Just the base spell needs to be buffed a little bit, and then whatever with the lore.
All right, so Konacon, when the SMRv2 stuff is done, Stonefist time.
Stonefist, you know, I have my own like personal list of spells that I'd like to work on. Stonefist is definitely one of them. That doesn't mean I'm not saying it is going to get worked on.
You heard it here first, folks. Stonefist by December.
By December. Yeah, along with a bunch of other reworks and things that I don't have time to do while I'm doing SMRv2.
Yeah, and you know, working and raising a family and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Aside from Earth, if you look at the lore benefits for 950, it actually gives you like a pretty good like example of what those lores do. Again, it really fits like with what Whirlin said. Fire is more damage. Water lets you do just more cool stuff with it because it lets you spend more mana with your 950 without actually spending it. 950 isn't defensive at all, so Earth instead gives you more uses, which I think is one of the really popular choices to go 60 Earth so that you can get 2 950s a minute. And then Air has the channeling bolt thing, which I think a lot of people aren't big fans of, but I think it's cool.
I would recommend that any new wizard that is going to take any cliff note away from this session, everybody that's leveling should probably be channeling their bolts.
If you are a new wizard and you are looking to level up, it's obvious. Like, I have learned from trying to do that, it is really, really, really painful sub 20 to try to be. I was like, I'm going to be a pure wizard from the get-go. And your mana is so tight that it's like almost impossible. And so I think what a lot of people do is, you know, they grab a Clade or whatever, and they just sort of swing that and maybe take advantage of celerity and then maybe try to go pure when they hit 20. But what advice would we give to the like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed wizard that's starting out and wants to grind their way up?
Find a higher level wizard to duplicate and charge up wands for you.
That is good advice.
Like that will I had to do that way back then. I had to bug the shit out of everybody to help me out with that, and it makes a huge difference. Them 40 charges versus 10, especially when you barely have a mana pool, it'll make a huge difference, and it'll make your life a lot easier.
You'll actually be able to fry while you're hunting, right?
Yeah, you don't have to worry about like forced downtime. You just go in when you're done.
Just instead of like if you're just thinking about making a wizard, instead of selling your, you know, golden wands or thunder blue wands or whatever, like save those up. Just go put them somewhere. You do whatever you got to do. Save those up. Make a wizard, and then find someone to charge up all the wands, and then duplicate them, and you're going to be good for a while.
Yeah, you'll be set. If you see me in game and you need some charged up or whatever, just let me know. It takes not long at all anymore.
And I know that too. Like the thing that I didn't know in terms of like starting out a new wizard, and I think everyone knew this except me, but Steam is the way to go, right? Like starting out Steam in terms of like mana per damage is definitely the most efficient way to hunt at the lower levels. Would you all agree with that?
It's efficient even at cap. I use that spell more than anything else. Yeah, by the numbers, it's really effective. The only thing I don't like about it is it's not the most exciting spell. It's high damage but low crit.
Another comment I would make for new wizards, not even just new wizards, new casters in general, is lores can feel really intimidating when you're getting into it, but when you're level 20 or something, I wouldn't, unless you're going for something specific like Steam, unlike an unlock, I wouldn't worry like too much about your lores. Like at level 20, they're like at cap, lores become a really big thing, and as you gain levels, they become bigger and bigger and bigger. But when you're leveling, like don't kill yourself worrying about like if your lores are right or not.
Yeah, that's not going to make or break anything while you're leveling.
Let's talk about what is probably the most significant change in wizardry since I've been playing the game again, which is the enchanting system changes. Enchanting just went over this huge, this enormous overhaul. What did enchanting used to be like, and how does that compare to what it's like now? And then how do those changes affect the game that we're playing?
Old style, at least when I first started playing, it was the infusion system where you go to a workshop, you got to infuse all your mana forever. They got a private pool, which is the workshop pool, and then there's a public pool, which is just any other room that's not a workshop. And I don't remember the numbers, but when you enchant something, it draws from both, which means somebody could just screw you over, too. They could just sit at a table and cast a 1x enchant in the same realm you're in and drain your public pool, all that. But basically, you could enchant stuff as fast as you could infuse mana. And I was still pretty low level. I didn't really get into it much before it changed to I think it got disabled for a while, and then they came out with the weight system. But I remember, dissipating them. He had, this big army of halfling COL clerics and all that, and a bunch of high-level empaths with triple mana share and all that. 'Cause the mana share stat would, someone would infuse 100 mana, and if they have a ton of mana share, it'll infuse a bunch of extra bonus mana for free. So they'd get people like Angelisa and all them, who were super high-level empaths, super high mana share and all that, and they would just send her all the mana, or whatever empath is there. They would infuse it. All the halfling clerics will dissipate whoever he'd rack, drain a bunch of spirit. Once he's down to 1, the halfling clerics would just rotate, casting a Well of Life on him, which didn't have a cooldown back then either. So halflings, they got really fast spirit regen, so they can just cast that all day long with a big rotation of it. So he's just endlessly infusing mana, and from what people would say, he would just crank out multiple 8, 9, 10x stuff before noon, and he was making tons of money off it. But I never really did a whole lot of it myself. Did a few enchants, and it just took forever because I just grabbed some friends and we just infused, didn't have high-level people and all that. I don't remember the timeline for it, but I'm pretty sure the spell got disabled for a while off of that system until they came out with a new system, which was the pour and wait one. That's about as simple as it gets. I never really was super heavy into enchanting. It was just something I would do on the side. Just check my item. If it's ready to cast, I'll cast it and all that. But I didn't put high priority on it at all. And the new system, I did same thing. If I have mana to have enough juice to enchant something, then I'll enchant it.
Well, and in the pour and wait system, so that one, I never got anything enchanted under that system because I always felt like giving a wizard something, because they would hold on to it for months at a time, right?
Yeah, it can't be used while it's tempering or it'll just break. I never enchanted my old stuff at all under that system. I didn't even start enchanting my own stuff until this new system.
Yeah, I just feel like you were undertaking actual risk there, because it'd be I'll give this person I don't even really know this thing that is really valuable to me, and I will hope that they will do what they said they'll do, and B, not die. And that was the thing I was always thinking about. It's what if I give it to this guy, even this guy I really know and trust, and then they just get hit by a car tomorrow? That's it, right? That's my thing.
Yeah,
that's how my mind works, I guess. That's how my mind works.
And then plus, your item could blow up then, too, on a bad fumble. So you always have that risk. But sometimes it'll, I did an enchant for somebody. It was a 7x fusion piece or something like that. And then by the time it was done, they just disappeared. It's still sitting in my locker for 3 years.
Well, I will happily accept that as a donation if you want to give that away for charity.
All right.
That's better than my laxes, at least. Because then on top of that, if the person dies, right? You're like, okay, so how long after they die do I have to wait till I can ask someone that they know, hey, do you know how to log in so I can get my weapon?
Hey, what was his first pet's name, by the way? Yeah. I'm really sorry for your loss, but do you remember the name of his first girlfriend?
I don't mean to be insensitive, but
what street did he grow up on?
I have a weapon in my game that I really need back, and he kind of had it at the time.
I would love to ask Chris in billing, what kinds of crazy stories she has about people reaching out to try to get stuff they shouldn't have, because I'm sure that there are some awesome stories there.
I would like to hear that.
All right, that's a future episode. We talked about the old school where there was this halfling cabal, churning out plus 50 items in seconds flat, and then the pour and wait phase, which I think we can all agree that was the worst phase of enchanting. And then now we have this new system where my understanding as an expert wizard that knows the game completely and fully is that you go out, you gather essence by killing things, kind of like in Sorceling, and then you just cast and enchant things like 1 point at a time, right? Someone correct me on that.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, I can't correct you on that.
Yes.
That seems accurate. Also, really quick, I actually think that the Halfling Cabal would be the worst, even over Pour and Wait, because I think if that Cabal style of enchanting still existed, there would be no Drevenings anymore, because he would just be doing that.
No,
he would have a whole machine.
That's obviously the worst. The thing that's great about it, though, is that there was a Halfling Cabal. Like, that's what's great about that system.
I'm just saying, I think I would enjoy watching Dreven run through that system.
Oh, he would turn that thing inside out within like 25 minutes. Like, it would be...
Yeah.
Yeah. No, obviously that's the worst system in terms of like making the game fun. I'm just saying it's the only system that has a shadowy cabal of tiny half people. And
I don't disagree.
That makes it the
correct.
best system. What's the sort of general consensus on this? Like, how do we feel about this change to enchanting?
I mean, I'm a fan.
No, I think it's all right. And I like the system how it is, because I mean, it's just like how Sorcerer is going to go farm their shit. And that's kind of how I've been wanting it for a while compared to the Pour and Wait system, so I don't really have any problems with it. Like, pretty much for the first time ever, I'm actually enchanting my own stuff now, because I would never bother with it before, because I'm not going to just stuff in a locker for 3 months and not use it because I need it.
Well, right, and on the flip side of that, like, I never paid for an enchant under the old system because I didn't want to give up stuff for that long, and I've already gotten a couple things enchanted under this new system because I just show up, give it to the guy, or gal, and then immediately get it enchanted and get it back, and that's it.
I don't personally see any big benefits from the old system over the new one, other than people who had wizards that didn't want to play their wizards.
Yeah, like if you wanted to keep a wizard just to like make some slow money on the side, then the old system was probably easier for a lazy person.
And yeah. If you didn't want to play your wizard, then the old system was probably better in your opinion.
Yeah, and that seems like, if that's accurate, if we can agree that that's accurate, that's a really shitty criterion to use for saying the old system is better. I recently went through some quite an experience trying to get an item of mine enchanted because I didn't know that ensorceling it increased the difficulty. Now, that's like a user error thing, right? Like, I should have probably done my research before I did it, but to help other folks who are considering enchanting a project piece that they want to work on, to help them avoid those same pitfalls, what general advice can we give to people who are considering taking up like a big enchanting project, or just trying to get something that they really like enchanted? What should they know?
So I think that a lot of what I knew about enchanting did change with the latest patch, but I did some theory crafting with some folks, and we were finding that it was best to do an enchant up to about 8x and then do the ensorceling, just because they both impact each other. So ensorceling makes enchanting more difficult, enchanting makes ensorceling more difficult, but the way that the equations were generally working out based on our observations, you can take something to about 8, 9x, then ensorcel it up, and then finish off the enchanting to it. Now that we're in an environment where it's kind of riskless, I don't quite know how those equations work out nowadays, but definitely you want to finish off all of your enchanting and ensorceling before you begin doing something like waiting, padding, sighting, anything to that extent.
We're going to do the top 10 wizard spells in Gemstone. And so, just for listeners, what we've done is each of us has secretly voted on our top 10 favorite wizard spells before we did this panel. And only I know how everybody has voted. And I'm about to reveal the rankings from the 10th best wizard spell to the single best spell in the game. And here, we're defining wizard spells as meaning any spell that can only be cast by a wizard. So anything from the wizard circle or the major elemental circle. and everybody on the panel was free to interpret best however they wanted to. Most powerful, most interesting, whatever. So coming in at number 10, we have 519. So let's talk about Immolation. What makes this spell great?
Right now, just the fact that it seems cool. Like, the concept of the spell is really cool. You know, you just wiggle your finger a little bit and shit just incinerates. But as far as the numbers go, it's not really nothing anymore. I put it on there because it's still a cool spell and concept.
Coming in at number 9, we have 925, which is Enchant item. So let's talk about why was that one on our list?
I mean, for me, it's on the list because it's one of those why you make a wizard spells.
Yeah, I don't understand how you can not have it on your list. Nice.
Yeah.
So Matthias gave us no votes, so tell us why.
I mean, that's one of the few spells in the game that, you know, permanently changes an item. So, like, it's pretty much what a lot of the economy is based around and all that. But, and, you know, of course, you're a wizard, so you're going to be enchanting. If a wizard couldn't enchant, it would just seem really stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a huge, as far as advantages go, it's a huge money maker in the game. You don't really have to do a whole lot extra for it. Sometimes you don't even have to do anything extra for it, depending on your play style.
Yeah, the only spell on our list that is affiliated with a shadowy halfling cabal. Up next on our list, coming in at number 8, we have Haste 535 from the Major Elemental spell or Major Elemental Circle. So, what does Haste do, and why is that on our list?
I think it's an incredibly potent defensive spell. It's one of the best ways of reducing incoming round time, which is one of the deadliest ways that wizards can be hit, but then it also adds a lot of interesting utility. So if you're one of those masochists that have actually decided to level alchemy for some godforsaken reason, forging is going to be faster. If for some reason you decide to make arrows, everything about fletching is faster. So it's a lot of neat little benefits across everywhere, and very similar to what we were talking about with enchanting. It's pretty class defining. I mean, 35th level spell, of course it's going to be, but it's, when you think of it, you just kind of think of wizards.
Coming in next at number 7, we have the only spell on this list that got only one vote, but the vote it got was so high on someone's rankings that it put it in all the way at number 7. So we have Meteor Swarm at number 2 for Methais. So talk about why Meteor Swarm is so high for you and what this spell is.
As far as game mechanics go, it's useless garbage, but that's the spell that's supposed to, define a wizard's offense. Like, when I first made that character, I couldn't wait to get Meteor Swarm because I thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever. The concept of it is just really cool. It's one of them spells, if they would, just tweak it to make it useful, make it focus. I don't know whatever would have to be done with it. But if that spell could be made useful, that would probably be the best spell in the game as far as, fun goes.
And I think this was like the first gemstone meme that I was aware of before memes were even really a thing, was the idea of like a wizard going into Town Square Central and casting Meteor Swarm, right?
I've done it.
Yeah, there you go.
Seen it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Plus, it's also strong in the sense that it's one of the few spells that could probably get you banned really quickly.
I was going to say, I don't recommend that route of action.
But what if it's for role-playing reasons?
Well, all I'm saying is, back when it was Town Square Southwest that everyone was casting masses, I miscast 425 and 525. Oh. And the thing about Meteor Swarm is it hits the adjacent room, so people were fogging in and fogging back into Town Square Central and still getting killed.
Yeah, you accidentally cast 525 instead of 425.
The small part came out like a day later, so I'm not saying that it's causal, but I'm not saying it's not causal.
All right. Rounding out the bottom 5 of our rankings here, we have a spell that I have literally never heard of until I saw that you all had voted for it. We have Mana Leech, which is 516. So what the heck is Mana Leech?
It is let you steal mana from your target. It's a really strong spell as far as, keeping your mana full. You pretty much double your mana with that spell if you can ward reliably, which most can.
So this is a much more mechanically useful spell. This isn't one that we think is fun and joyful or evokes like stereotypical wizard feelings in our warm hearts. This is just this thing really helps you hunt well.
Yeah, this is just a numbers and mechanics spell.
I mean, technically, you could argue, like you're draining mana from something, so it's not using that mana anymore. But yeah, I think I agree. I voted for it because I think wizards need it. They're built to need it.
Every class all the pures have a built-in mana recovery system. So both empaths and clerics are able to meditate to improve their mana regen and capabilities. Sorcerers are able to sacrifice, and the wizard's answer to that is Mana Leech. It's what gives us a longevity to actually hunt long enough to be fried. Once you're of level and once those CS TD values have stabilized, like 30s, 40s onwards, to be able to really extend your hunt until you're fried.
Coming in at number 5, now we're in the top 5 here. We have one that I actually had when I had done my rankings. This was my number 2 because it was one of the ones that I knew. But it seemed really powerful. Celerity, 506.
I mean, you can't have War Mages without Celerity. Like, when the ELR came out, and there was the question of, are War Mages still even going to exist? It was because of Haste, now Celerity/Haste.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what enables, Whirlin, what you were talking about earlier with the Claymore swinging wizard that might not hit hard, but he's going to hit often, and when he does hit, it's going to lop off a hand or whatever. Like, this is what allows that to happen.
Absolutely. It's making more mages viable. It's phenomenal.
It's great for foraging bounties, too.
Okay,
Yeah.
does Celerity affect any round time?
For foraging? Yeah, it affects foraging.
Number 4, and this is our first spell that we're getting to that someone put as their number 1, and it's also the first spell that everybody voted for. So coming in at number 4, we have 518, Cone of Elements. Why is Cone of Elements on our list?
This was my number 1 pick. I am absolutely in love with Cone of Elements. Look, I really don't care about all the bells and whistles that I know Konacon and everybody else spent a lot of time on. Just at its core, it's a massive AoE. By definition, it's a super cheap cost because it used to be the equivalent of casting 9-10 on every mob. So even if you had 2 mobs, it was already mana efficient. It was such a game changer when you first unlocked it. It was something that you always aspired to get. I remember when, being a low-level wizard, I used to ask for Cone of Elements wands, or Cone of Lightning at the time, wands just all the time because it's such a powerful spell.
And
yeah, that's one of the
bolts.
wizard milestone spells. It just wrecks a lot of stuff really good.
And it's the only way you can cast Vacuum Bolt.
All right, what's a vacuum bolt? Someone tell me.
It's a bolt that does vacuum crits.
All right. I'm editing that out.
If you can't... Why? If you cast Air Cone of Elements, like Cone of Elements Air, it's a vacuum bolt, and there is no spell you can cast unless that's changed recently, and I don't know about it. There is no spell you can.
Tanis Bolt?
No.
Man, what spaghetti code are we working with?
Spaghetti code? Excuse me.
Uh-oh. So, coming in at number 3.
Did you just skip it? Hold on a second. All right. Spaghetti code. I went out of my way to give you guys vacuum bolts.
And you don't even appreciate
This is what I
them.
get.
Yeah, right.
Okay, but since we are what makes vacuum bolts more mechanically advantageous than the unbalanced flares that you would get with a 505 bolt?
This is not what I'm talking about. People wanted vacuum bolts, and I gave them vacuum bolts.
All right, fair enough.
You have to understand that anytime Whirlin thinks about anything, it's
I know
what mechanical advantage it offers.
I mean, I'm not gonna say that I do the same thing because, like, as I'm working on things, sometimes I'm like, nobody's gonna care about this because mechanically it doesn't do anything useful. But they want it, we give it to them.
Yeah.
Vacuum bolts.
Vacuum bolts. All right, you heard it here, folks. Coming in at number, where are we now? Coming in at number 3, we have Konacon. This, I've got to say, a real shock that this was your number one. I was shocked. I was shocked. But it was also really high for everybody else. 917 Earthen Fury.
It could have been number 2 if Whirlin had gotten off his butt and ranked it a bit higher. Just saying.
That's true. It was only 1 point shy of our number 2. But so why is Earthen Fury so high up?
Well, I mean, it's high up because it's my baby. So I'll let the actual wizards talk about it. I just love it. It just makes me happy.
I always thought Boil Earth was a really cool spell, but it was just weak. This is like a much stronger Boil Earth, just in slow motion. But it hits really hard, so a lot of times you don't even need all those hits. It'll kill on the first or second. It's just a really good spell to have. Stuff's defense is really high. You can't ward it, or you can't hit it hard enough to kill it as fast as you need to before it kills you. This is the solution most of the time on those types of encounters. And it's just a cool spell in concept.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the reasons that I've historically preached War Mages a lot is because it offers multiple different ways that you can attack. And in that same vein is this spell specifically, because it's not using a bolt. It's not utilizing that DS or TD resolution in order to determine if it hits. It is Konakon's baby of SMR V2. It's completely distinct. So you might have those situations where something's turtled. You might have a situation where you get a terrible champion in Dusk Ruin, but you'll still be able to hit them and disable them with Earthen Fury to then follow up and attack it normally once its defenses are down. It's a nice niche that we needed, especially after the Immolation nerfs, because Immolation was kind of our go-to all-in CS attack to deal with things that were high defense. And with that kind of taken away, this really gives us that opportunity to still remain viable, even if our conventional attacks are failing.
So
it also did enable the Mutant 300 Enchanting build, which I don't know if I should be proud of or not, but
it was going to be necessary, I think. The reality is, everybody's going to be going all out with enchanting. There's high-end stuff that we want to enchant, so
yeah,
of course
people need to enchant my gear, and so, let them do it however they got to do it. Like, that's the important thing. All right, coming in very narrowly, edging out Earthen Fury by 1 point in our rankings, we have Rapid Fire, 515. And this is another one where I think someone joked with me about how my podcasts are just me sounding stupid all the time, which I think is true. But I'm going to reveal my ignorance here. I don't know. I think they meant it in I hope they meant it in a playful way. But I don't know a lot about this game, and Rapid Fire is a spell that is apparently super important, and I have no idea what it does. So tell us.
I mean, you can cast one spell every second. Speed is everything in this game. And this gives you as much speed as possible with any spell that you're casting.
So how do people like to use this in their builds? Like, is there a special wombo combo they like to use with Rapid Fire, or are they just doing their normal thing just at warp speed?
It depends what you're fighting. Like, a lot of stuff I fight, I'll just run in, spam my bolts or whatever, and just kill them. You can pretty much combo spells together now, because with the old one, with the 0 round time, if you wanted to cast a different spell, you still had to wait out the 3-second cast round time before you could cast a different spell. With this one, everything is 1 second no matter what, so you could run in a room, cast Call Wind, 1 second later, cast something else, and then 1 second later, cast whatever else, and just wipe out a room pretty quickly. Speed is just everything in this game. How many times have you died from something 1/10 of a second before you could move or do anything like that? It happens all the time.
Oh, I'm actually so skilled at this game that none of my characters has ever died. It's true.
Well, other than you, of course.
Yeah.
Didn't we start this podcast talking about how you tried playing a wizard and just constantly died all the time?
Well, really what I'm doing there is I'm appealing to the masses by making them feel, like they can relate to me a little better. No, yeah.
And remember, he can edit you out.
Yeah, and you can prove me wrong as much as you want. It'll get good.
I wonder how many of the I'm going to edit you out comments make it into the final cut, because that's going to be the interesting thing.
You know what? I don't know that I have ever left that in. I think I need to listen. Well, I think there's one thing we will have to edit out. You know what? I'm going to leave in all the crap that I might have edited out, and I'm just going to sound real dumb, which is my thing on this podcast. We're ready for number 1 now, which I think is probably not a surprise to most people listening, but the number 1 spell that wizards have access to, according to our esteemed panel and myself, is Core Tap 950, which is a ridiculous spell. But talk about why this is just so high up there.
If you want everything to die instantly, cast that.
Yeah.
That's all I got, really.
All right.
That's
so,
it.
yeah, if you just want to immediately destroy everything in a room, Core Tap is the way to go.
Well, I mean, you can talk about like what your favorite like combos
Yeah,
are.
that's what I want to know. What
do you like play around with 950 sometimes?
Like you're not just
This
you're
is
not
what I
just
wanna
casting. Well, and so first of all, to back up, what Core Tap does is it lets you cast 6 spells at once, right?
On the whole room.
It's potential for more. So if you utilize something like a single target spell or even a ball spell, it will cast it on up to, I believe, 6 targets in the room before it then moves to the next spell. So you can do something like Core Tap 908 6 times, and it's actually going to effectively cast it an absolute ton of it.
It's 5 plus elemental mana control skill over 50, so it's more than that.
Yeah, that is astronomical. So imagine that, and you're doing something like a Ream Invasion, and then you're casting a ball spell, and since you're in Ream and Super Post-Cap, you have a bunch of ranks of multi-opponent combat, so all of your balls splash each time, and you're casting it, what was that, like 57 times? That's going to be... That's a lot of... Flex Tape won't solve that.
It's really funny for me to picture in that like Ream group the rogue who's there, right? Who's like hiding in the shadows, like I'm gonna jump out with my dagger, and then the wizard just explodes everything in the room instantaneously in this furious ball of fire. Poor rogues, poor
That's
rogues,
pretty spot on.
Poor rogues.
Yeah, they're in bad shape.
Well, I want to actually stick with what Konacon said, and I want to ask what is the most fun you can possibly have with Core Tap? Like, what's the best combination of spells you can do? We've got major fireballs to destroy everything in a wave of lava. But what else can you do that's fun?
I also love stacking disablers, so I will use 917, 915, 519 all together. So therefore, they get the weapon fire, the dot from Earthen Fury, and the dot from Immolate. And if you hit something with all those things, they're done.
So that's like you're like the kid with like the magnifying glass, like slowly burning the ant with the power of the sun, right? Like that.
I would keep that for going back to a Duskruin champion that has a super high DS and TD. Just boom, Core Tap it. It's done.
I mean, yeah. When I was writing Core Tap, I tested it a lot with 917 because I just enjoyed watching that. It's like watching more Core Taps happen every 2 seconds after your initial one.
Yeah, I used to mess around with it, and I would cast like 512 twice at the beginning, and then go into 917. Because when something's frozen from that spell, fire will add like an extra flare attack to it. So you got them double frozen like that, and then you got Earthen Fury hitting them with fire, adding all those extra attacks, and I just throw in whatever after, probably just bolts to finish them off. But it would look like just kind of like old school Dark Catalyst, where your screen would just scroll with numbers all over the place and just shit dying.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, 512 with 917 was...
Yeah. Seeing that shit on the screen the way it scrolls like that is just cool. I don't know why, but it is.
Final question in this area. What spell is not accessible by wizards, but that for lore/flavor reasons should be? And I have an answer to this that I think is the correct answer. So I think that Energy Maelstrom 710 has no place in the Sorcerer spell circle whatsoever. I just don't think it fits like what the Sorcerer is or what the Sorcerer does, and I think it does 100% fit into Major Elemental. Like, it feels like a Major Elemental spell to me.
It's kind of like a diet version of Meteors, if you could focus Meteor Swarm.
I mean, there's so much history with Maelstrom, though, because...
I think the reason why sorcerers can have it is why it should be a sorcerer spell is because meteors are just way better. Just like wizards are. way better than sorcerers.
How dare you, sir?
I mean, but there's history in that because way back in the day, we used to have Stun Cloud in the 904 spot. We used to have Death Cloud in the 913 spot and Firestorm in the 912 slot. And I remember back in those days, a lot of my hunting was purely based on turtling and letting the clouds do work. And Maelstrom was kind of the sorcerer's equivalent of that back in the day. But that being said, yeah, no, that makes sense.
I'm just saying the whole spell is built around this idea of this tempest, this elemental tempest, right? That's either like raining ice or lightning or boulders or whatever. That's a wizard spell. It's not a sorcerer spell. All right, so then that rounds out our top 10. We all settled on 950 as being the best wizard spell in Gemstone, and if you have anything to say about it, feel free to harass any of us in the Discord or in game, because we'd love to hear what you think. So to wrap things up today, let's talk a little bit about how we'd like to see wizards developed in the future. So what changes would make what is already regarded as a pretty great class even better?
Reduce some of the requirements like shatter and all that, like I was talking about, and just make wizards less tedious. Like, take more advantage of how you can combo spells together with rapid fire. A lot of spells do have synergy with them, but most of them are still pretty weak, or they have huge lore requirements, or both. Make stuff like that. Encourage wizards to be able to just chain different spells together with rapid fire, and then once all your stuff's stacked, then you cast your payoff spell, you get a big burst of damage. That's going to be your kill spell. Do something like that to make them more interesting than just run into a room, maybe E-Wave or something, and then just mash your bolt macro or whatever your normal kill spell is, or just run in, cast 917, just sit there and wait till it dies. Give us more reasons to chain different spells together with that one cast round time.
You're okay with a complicated setup if the payoff is big?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I definitely agree with Matthias's points. The other areas that I would look at would be more holistic. I'd like to see more concepts of elemental resistances and more leveraging real strengths and weaknesses of element versus element. Right now we have, trolls are weak to fire. We get a little bit of an additional layer against them. I love that, and it's such a minor thing, but it's not really systemic, widespread, completely leverageable. And yeah, if we did have more spell synergies, that would absolutely assist towards it. But really just adding in more look and feels between the different elements and just kind of working on some synergies. I think that Chromatic Orb was probably one of the most promising spells in that regard, in truly delineating like, oh, I'm a fire mage, I'm going to make this stuff weak to fire, and I'm going to throw fire at it. Like, that was such a neat concept that I kind of wish got taken a little further.
Yeah, I remember when I first started playing a wizard way back, and I was waving gold wands at forest trolls at like level 6. And yeah, that extra flare of damage that they take, I thought that was the coolest thing ever too. And I thought that was gonna, like, most of the things in the game had some kind of stuff like that. Most stuff doesn't, so I was kind of disappointed by that. But that kind of concept there, like you were talking about, is another thing that's really awesome too, that they should expand to more creatures. And not just for wizards, not just elemental weaknesses. Give them, throw in whatever for spiritual or piercing, slashing, crush, or whatever. Make more critters noticeably weak to certain types of attacks. And that'll encourage people who play any profession to try different things, like different weapon styles or different types of attacks, things like that.
Would you be willing to accept that at the cost of also making them less vulnerable to other types?
Yes.
Yeah, it would make
Absolutely.
sense. Like, something cold, something that's made of ice should be weak against fire and not give a shit about getting cold cast at it. Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. That's how it should work with most things.
So we want to implement the Pokemon resistance system with gemstone creatures.
I don't see why not.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. That sounded much more sarcastic than I meant it to be. All right, Konacon, you got that?
Yeah, understood.
We expect it by Monday.
Yeah, right.
I still had this vision of a future boss in Gemstone, like dungeon boss, something to that extent, that just had rotating resistances that you needed to have multiple methods of attack throughout phases of a fight in order to actually overcome. So something might be
like a WoW boss kind of thing.
I mean, yeah, WoW or basically any other MMO where, hey, it's taking fire damage for the next 30 seconds. Throw all of your fire damage. Oh, now it's taking slashing. If you keep casting fire, you are going to heal it for twice the amount of damage that you would have done.
Yeah, and something that requires like really good coordination and communication.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that would
that would be awesome. That would be really awesome.
You know, I think that what I would want is for that bot, I would want it to not be like a massive group running in. So like say you assemble a party, you can only assemble a party of like 3 people, right? And if you do, well, let's say you do 3 pures, right? Then you're going to get a boss that's going to be strong against your group. So you're going to get a boss that has like really great maneuvers maybe, or a boss that, I don't know. I think it'd be cool if there was no way to like farm it, that like whatever you did like was going to be a challenge for you. Because I feel like what Gemstone players are really good at is min-maxing everything and finding like the most efficient way to do whatever. And I think that like what I would want out of that experience is an actual challenge that feels like fresh and new. And obviously that's not a simple concept to like make real. I'm just sort of thinking out loud about what would make that fun for me.
Yeah, the biggest problem is if you isolate it to n number of people, you're going to have a meta established incredibly quickly. I can tell you right now, the meta would be empath, sorcerer, and wizard. And wizard deals with the AoEs, empath keeps them cured up, sorcerer deals with single target damage with
but you could establish parameters that would make that combination impossible, right? Like you could say there's no healing, or you could say that things have to, like you were talking about phases of damage, like maybe for the first it just cycles through even randomly, or maybe you have to trigger something that causes it to cycle at a certain point where it's like it's only going to take slash damage, or it's only going to take puncture damage, or it's immune to magic during this time to prevent you from doing that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the meta as long as the meta doesn't get stale. Like every game has a meta. It only becomes problematic if you don't work to address it.
I think that the other things that kind of make it a little problematic, at least in the Gemstone area, is the distribution of individuals playing classes. So if you did establish a small dungeon style event, it truly over-incentivizes empaths just because of the prevalence of COL and Vuln. If you're GOS, you can always symbol to continue casting, continue attacking, etc. But empaths, their value just shoots through the absolute roof when doing group content. But the reality is empaths are not super available. There really aren't that many, whereas wizards are dime a dozen.
But yeah, I think again though, you could just say, certain society abilities wouldn't be usable in that space. So like you can't rack, or you can't send mana. Like I think you could impose, and obviously it's easy to say things like that without, because there's always going to be a like, well, what about this? What about this? I think that there are ways that you could impose conditions to like take out the really obviously broken stuff to make it fun and enjoyable.
I agree with you, Methais.
Yeah, you could expand on that thing with these little mini boss mobs and all that. Put them wherever to access them, and just give them a shitload of hit points, and give them like multiple resistances or whatever they have, to where you'll need all kinds of different profession setups in order to be able to handle them.
I think part of what makes things like those dungeons or raids or whatever, what part of makes that fun is the progression element, in this idea that like you have to sort of work through something over time. I don't know, I'm just thinking it'd be kind of cool if you could have an instance or whatever that you start, and you can't, like, if you say you can't regenerate mana in the instance, right? Or you could put some weird conditions, and they could even be random, or they could change depending on the day of the week, or whatever condition was set. so that you might be able to get through a certain thing, but then you'd have to leave and then try it again the next day. Like, I think that'd be a cool way to build something like this into the game. And obviously, this stuff's easy to talk about. I'm sure it's much harder to do, but I would love to see something like that. I think you're right, Whirlin. That would be a really cool thing to see.
So I also told Matthias about this, and it's probably one of my favorite events in any MMO ever created, and that is its salvage in Final Fantasy XI. The way that this event runs, or the way that it works, is that you start off with literally absolutely nothing. No equipment, no weapons, no abilities, no spells, nothing. And as you kill more monsters, you get tangible items that you need to use to unlock things. And things get progressively more and more difficult as you get to the higher floors, etc. And you just need to strategically determine who is getting each one of those unlocks along the way to maximize your entire party's success. So when I think about something like Gemstone and kind of the prevalence of large groups plowing through content, doing something selective like that, and to take the concept that you just introduced, like, oh, you don't naturally regenerate mana. You might get one or two unlocks the entire instance that you run. You can determine who you want to give them to. Or, hey, you can't crit. Oh, you might end up getting one dropped that has to go to one person. They have to drink a potion in order to be able to crit things. Those types of concepts I always thought were a lot of fun, because you needed to balance the speed of progression, the farming aspect, how long it was going to take you to defeat the boss. It was all incredibly tightly time boxed.
Whirlin, the salvage idea I think is awesome, and I would love for something like that where you're just kind of like parachuted in with nothing, and you know, it's sort of like a session based thing where like it doesn't really matter if you have this incredible Roblar or Warclade weapon of doom, like you are just a rogue, and you have to sort of like figure out how to work your way through, given like some elements of chance but also, you know, your own like wit and strategy. I don't know, that sounds cool to me. So someone work on that, someone make that happen.
So you want a dungeon with permanent death in it? Okay.
Yes.
I want to no.
What about
dungeon.
this? You die in it, you're locked out for a week.
I was gonna say I want a dungeon where failure comes with a real cost.
Yeah.
And you know, it doesn't need to be like painful, but I don't know, like you can just die now without deeds and it's fine, you know. And I don't think you should lose your character. Like, I think that's crazy.
Oh,
but,
yeah, it's great. I was trying to joke there.
Yeah, no, but yes. But the answer to your question is yes, I do. I want a dungeon where the stakes are high. And I don't even think you need to get a lot. I think that people just enjoy, like, if Dark Souls has taught us anything, it's that people just enjoy a genuine challenge. And we're now, like, way off topic, but I think that was a fun little diversionary path that we went down. Konacon, is there anything you want to talk about wizard development, or that you can talk about wizard development?
For me, what I'd like to see for wizard development, and again, this doesn't mean I'm going to work on it, it doesn't mean anything, is like it's like why I worked on our Earthen Fury. You know, I talked about that with you, Milax. Like, that was my, like, Stonefist, right? Like, I was super excited about Boil Earth, and then I found out, like, it was garbage, and I was like super disappointed by that, you know?
Yeah. That is my thing that I would love to see, is I would love a Stonefist viable hunting build where, like, and I would be fine with it even being like the only thing you could do well is like summon this fist that can do fun things for you, and like would actually be like a viable hunting strategy. That's my thing. That's what I want. Stonefist. Yeah. I want Stonefist to get the 917 treatment.
Actually, one thing that I do want to give lots of GM appreciation for is 1700. I think that was actually I was debating putting on my top 10.
That's the free little pinging spell, right?
It's free 901, and that's just such a neat little nod potential that Yeah, I just appreciate that.
Yeah. Also, I learned when I was leveling up my wizard, I don't know how to say this player's name, and I don't think it's an easy one, but I'm going to try it. Nawadja? Naja? Anyone want to try it? You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you say that? How would you guys say it?
Nawada.
Nawada? There's no way.
I always just like think like the fox.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
Fox,
that's
right?
what I think
Like
too.
so.
I see that. That's the picture in my head. Anyway, he gave me a mana flaring rune staff, and I found out that 1700 works with mana flares, which is pretty sweet because it's like you're using it because you're out of mana, and then it can help you to get your mana back, which is just a nice little interaction. All right, thank you all so much for participating in our Wizard Roundtable discussion. I learned a lot today, and I'm excited to apply some of my newfound knowledge to my little baby wizard who is running around the, I have discovered, incredibly racist town of Ta Valor. So, thank you all very much for coming out today.
It's pretty rough
Thank
over
you.
there.
I also learned a lot, which I may or may not apply.
And the real lessons were the friends we made along the way.
You were already my friend.
I really want to hang up after that, but I really want to tell you.
Thanks very much to Methais, Konacon, and Whirlin for helping out with today's episode. Thanks also to Eferup, Luktar, Lysel, The Town Crier, and Conrash for directly supporting the show on Patreon. If you're a fan and you'd like to make sure Town Square Central keeps happening, or you'd like it to happen more frequently, please check out the Patreon page linked in the episode notes. You can sponsor the show for as little as $2 per month, and you can also help influence future content and pay for all the work that goes into making this happen by becoming a patron. That's it for this week. Hope everybody enjoyed Ebongate. Keep it wizardly. Catch you next time on Town Square Central. I'm serious. That's all that matters to me.
I want to see his face when he hears you say that.
All right. Well, that's
get,
actually
Byron,
this whole episode.
We need a selfie right at this moment.
This whole episode is just gonna be that clip played over and over again for an hour. That's what it's gonna be.
And he's probably gonna know the whole time. He's gonna be like, "That motherfucker's mispronouncing my name. It's Worm." It never made sense to me, but
we will edit that out, my friend. You will look brilliant.